We have this basic block sleeve that we created with a dart in the elbow to accommodate the natural bend of the arm when it's in its relaxed state. But a lot of things that we make don't have a dart in the sleeve. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new sleeve that doesn't have a dart in it, so that when we want to start making things that don't have a dart in the sleeve, we'll have a dartless sleeve to start with. So this is in chapter 14 of our book on page 309. And our first step is going to be to trace off our basic block sleeve. So here I have my manila basic block sleeve, and I'll grab, let's see, do I have a ruler that's longer than the sleeve? Yes, I do. So the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I have enough paper to accommodate this sleeve and a little extra margin around it. And then I'm going to draw the grain lines and the horizontal balance lines for the sleeve onto my dot paper. So to do that, I'll just have a little planning session here, and I'll put this ruler on a row of numbers on my dot paper, and then I'll rest my sleeve on it and see how that fits. So that looks great. So I can go ahead and draw the grain line for my sleeve draft. Now, once I've established the grain line for my sleeve draft, I can go ahead and lay my sleeve onto the paper and align the grain line of my manila sleeve with the grain line that I drew on the dot paper. And now I can go ahead and trace my sleeve off. I'm going to put some weights on my sleeve so that it doesn't shift. And then I'm using a pencil to trace off my sleeve. I'm not using anything that could mark my pattern permanently should I accidentally touch my pattern. And I'm also not using anything that has like a wet ink, like a Sharpie, because that would compromise my pattern by getting it wet. This pattern is meant to be traced off many times, and so it seems like a small thing to have a wet tip of something like a Sharpie against your manila pattern, like it won't make that much of a difference. But because it gets traced so many times over time, having some wet juicy marker up against your pattern paper will compromise it and make it less stable. So now that I've traced my pattern, I'm going to make some marks for where my horizontal balance lines are. And down here is my wrist level. I'll go ahead with my punch holes for my darts. I've traced off my notches. So now I can remove my sleeve from my dot paper, and I will transfer my horizontal balance lines. If corners here are not really crisp, then we'll square those off. I'll come down to the wrist and see if those corners are square. Once I transfer my horizontal balance lines. So here at the wrist, try that again. the corners of my wrist are a little like squishy, they're not sharp. So I'll go ahead and put my ruler up against my underarm seam and just extend that line past the wrist level. And then I'll put my ruler on the wrist level and just extend that line a little bit past the underarm level, just to make that corner really nice and crisp. I'm not going to worry too much about it because I know what's in my future with this. So I'll go back to the book and check out what we're supposed to do next. To the book, we trace our sleeve, and then from A to C equals A to B, so it's the same length, but it's just squared to the biceps level. And then we do the same thing on the other side. So let's go back to our pattern on the table. So I'm just going to line one of these lines of my ruler up with my bicep level and my other horizontal balance lines, which actually it might be easier if I extend them a little bit past the sleeve. And then I just come right up to this little corner in the armpit, and I put this line of my ruler. Let me move this a little bit this way so that you can see a little better. So one of these lines on my ruler up against the horizontal balance line, and then the edge of my ruler right in the armpit. And then I put these other lines of my ruler up against these other horizontal balance lines, and I just square down. And make that a little longer. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to just check a measurement. So if I measure from across my biceps level from underarm to underarm, what's that measurement? So I get 14 1/8, it looks like. So down here at the hem of the sleeve, it should also be 14 1/8. So that would be 7 1/16 from center along the wrist level line, and then 14 1/8. Great. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that my sleeve stays straight and then it's not getting narrower or wider at the hem. So whatever the distance is across this top part should also be the same at the bottom part. So when we had our elbow dart, which is now not a thing anymore, we curved the sleeve and slanted the hem. We're getting rid of this slanted hem now, and we're gonna just cut this straight across. So let me grab some scissors and cut this piece out so you can see what we have. So I'm cutting on the straight line that I just made here, rather than the curved line from my original sleeve. So the cap of my sleeve is staying true to the original that I cut. And again here I'm cutting on the new straight line that I drew. Oops. That did not cut very straight, so let's correct. There we go. And then I'm gonna cut off that angled hem that I had on my original sleeve in favor of the new straight hem. Now this is a block, so it's not like a pretty stylish sleeve. It's just a tool to use to make other more interesting sleeves. So now I have my new shape. I'll lay the old one on top. And you can see the cap is the same. And so this whole upper part is the same. The only difference is from the underarm we just came straight down and then we went straight across. So that's our new sleeve shape. So I can now put my notches back in. So I have my 2 notches for my back sleeve. And I have my single notch for my center sleeve. And I have my single notch for my front sleeve. So I'll test this on muslin and sew it up with my my new bodice that I'm creating and my new skirt that I'm creating, so I can test the fit of everything. Also, something that's super important. This sleeve is going to have a new style number, but I need to have a reference to my old style number. So my reference number is, so I'll write ref for reference. So whenever you trace a pattern, you want to record what you traced it from in case you have to go back. So HLL 501. Now, I make a lot of patterns and they're numbered the same every semester. So for me, it's also going to be very important. It's always important, but for me, it's especially important because I have a bunch of patterns with HLL 501 as the style number. So I'm also going to need desperately the date. So I'll write fall 2025. That's when HLL 501 was made, or at least the version that I copied. So, like I said, I'm gonna, and it would also be a good idea for me to put which form, because I also make the same pattern for multiple forms with the same pattern number on it, which now sounds like a really dumb plan, but I do it for you guys because you're just making one, and I don't want to confuse you with the different pattern numbers, different style numbers. So my reference number is HLL 501, fall 2025, and I made this for Iris. So if you're ever tracing my patterns off, you want to do the same thing. In case you need to go back and retrace something, you want to make sure that you get a piece that will fit your pattern. So that's it for our dartless sleeve.